Hi, I'm Colin Spurdonoff.
And I'm Charlie Fierborn. We're the founders and co-presidents of Open Alpha USC.
Every semester, we bring together a group of passionate student developers to bring a game from conception to an Open Alpha release. And today, we're here to show off the game we've been building this fall semester.
This is the second game we've ever made, and we couldn't be more proud of our team. We brought on 6 new members at the beginning of the semester and have been working remotely for the entire fall.
In this premiere, you'll see the reveal of our game's trailer, a gameplay demo with commentary from one of our developers, and a Q&A session with our team leads.
After the demo, you'll also be able to download and play the game yourself, either as a direct download from our website or by redeeming a playtest key for Steam. You can see detailed download instructions on our website. Hope you enjoy it.
So without further ado, here's the trailer for our most recent game, Spooky Speakeasy.
Welcome to Spooky Speakeasy, a game about making drinks and making friends. When the big bad company threatens to shut down your bar, you have 1 week to put your bartending skills to the test, mixing cocktails and befriending monsters. Our approach to development focused heavily on the player's perceptions of the game's social scene and drink process. While there's definitely a sense of pressure to make your monster patrons happy, time isn't an issue. This game isn't intended to be a stressful, drink-making speedrun. The focus instead lies on using the monster's orders and the drink color to combine the right ratios of the right ingredients. The drink color mechanic is something unique to Spooky Speakeasy. It turns bartending into a creative activity, full of problem solving. Mixing liquids causes the drink to become different colors, as seen in the player's bartending glass. Monsters provide order descriptions, although their orders are often missing significant details. It's up to the player to use order clues and color combinations to find the proper ingredients. The color reference is visible with each order, so players know what end product they should be reaching for. Drink making has other mechanics too. After toppings are introduced, the player can place ingredients on top of the drink. True to its premise, the ingredients in Spooky Speakeasy are strange, unique, and monstrous. Even later in the game, the player can mix toppings into the drink using the shaker. As the toppings are incorporated into the drink, the color of the drink changes. It's important for players to keep in mind which toppings create which colors, and if recipes even require ingredients to be mixed in or not. If the player makes a mistake, no problem. They are free to clear the drink and start over without consequence. Once the drink is complete, the player simply clicks to equip the drink and gives the drink to the customer. Monsters care about the ingredients and ratios, so be careful to listen to their order instructions. Each new day in Spooky Speakeasy brings a handful of monsters. 3 seats are available in the bar at once, and players can choose who to serve of the 3 available monsters. You can always make a good impression by picking a particular monster first. Be careful not to leave them waiting too long, though. That's just bad bartender etiquette. While Spooky Speakeasy is a drink-making game, we care just as much about the unique cast of characters and the player's relationship to them. You can learn bits and pieces about characters during their order dialogue, and are given the opportunity to engage in more meaningful conversation after the bar closes each day. These after-hours scenes provide the opportunity to gain insights into the lives of these strange, mysterious monsters, and also give players the opportunity to help monsters solve specific problems. Careful on what you say, since your advice affects the lives of the monsters that you talk to. Since talking to a monster after hours occurs only once a day, you may miss talking to a specific monster you've had your eye on. Not to worry, monsters appear on multiple days of the week, so you have multiple opportunities to have a nice one-on-one chat with anyone you find particularly interesting. The drinks you make, how much you make the monsters wait at the bar, and what advice you offer them all affect how much monsters like you. Make sure to keep that in mind if you want to keep the monsters happy. As the game progresses and new mechanics and monsters are introduced, what you do affects the story, both in terms of the lives of the monsters you speak with and with the fate of your own bar. You have the opportunity to make a real impact, to build a welcoming and friendly community, to help solve problems, and maybe even persevere against the powerful big bad company. So start making drinks and making friends. You could be the bartender that these monsters need. And with enough ingredient mixing, enough toppings, and enough good conversation, maybe you could even help someone along the way.
Hi, I'm Alicia, and I'm the design lead for Spooky Speakeasy.
So what kinds of goals do you have for the game aesthetically, in terms of like what experiences you wanted the player to have?
Yeah, so that definitely was like cultivated as time progressed and was something that we were working on. And I think once we solidified it, it was really good. And that's when we could really get the design decisions rolling. We wanted the feel of the game to be a bit offbeat and like quirky, if you will, really like heartwarming and goofy. And we wanted it to be an experience that was casual, creative, and thoughtful. So we wanted it to be different from your like kind of typical order game type thing. We wanted the focus to not be solely on the points, but we wanted it to be a more thoughtful experience, having the things like the after hours and talking and building, and building relationships and friendships with the monsters and things like that.
So in your opinion, what's the most interesting feature about the game?
There are a lot of cool features in the game, but one of them that was pretty special is our drink making feature of using color, which actually Sarah, I think, came up with the original idea of using color, which was super cool. So we wanted to come up with a drink making mechanism that would be creative, but still be complicated. But we didn't want it to be like the usual having a routine kind of orderly thing, waiting on time, things like that. So Sarah came up with this idea of, trying to match a color by color mixing, and we worked off of that. And I thought that that was a pretty unique feature to have, and it opened up a lot of avenues for different things that we could implement and play off the color feature.
What are some key lessons that you learned about the game design process?
I learned a lot of lessons because I came into this not knowing really anything about the technicalities of game design, like at all. So I learned a lot. One main thing was definitely that each decision brings about like 10 decisions. So it's a very intricate process, and you really have to think things through. Think things through. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, guys. And just go beyond just thinking about the immediate effect a design decision will have. So being aware of the fact that each decision has a lot of effects and on other things and is very intricate makes it so that we were more thoughtful, I guess, in our decision-making process. As we went on, we realized how it's better to take more time and make a really thoughtful decision rather than to make a decision and then, the next week come and realize, oh, there were all these problems with that decision, and then having to keep on making changes. Just being more thoughtful in the decision processes. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, another lesson was that you can't appeal to everyone, and that goes like within the design team and also just in general players of the game. You can't really make a game that everyone is going to like and everyone's going to love and be super intrigued about. So I think kind of acknowledging that was something that we had to do, because otherwise it was very hard to balance like the wants of everyone, and just knowing that this game might just appeal to a certain target, and that's okay, and just working on how to make it a really great game in that avenue.
How did the direction of the game change throughout the semester? Were there any like important decisions that you had to make, like with the rest of the team, of dropping any features or implementing whole new features that would change the overall structure of the game?
The whole decision about, are we making this a drink making game, or are we making this like a relationship narrative based story game? And then trying to come up with like a balance and figuring out what direction the game wanted to go in. I know we had like a certain point in the game making process where we were like, okay, we really need to figure out what this is, and we really need to decide what direction this is going, because I think it goes along with the thing I previously stated about like we can't appeal to everyone. I think that was kind of like a pivotal point where we were like, okay, we need to decide on a direction we want to take the game and stick with that. And so that was, I think, a pretty tough decision that just had to be made. So yeah, we decided that we wanted to incorporate both the narrative story parts as well as the drink making components, but we didn't want it to seem disconnected. So what we did is we made the drink making process not as strictly like points based, having like a timer with an emotion bar going down. We wanted it to be a lot more casual, so we took off the timer component. We made it so you can clear your glass and start over and take as many tries as you want. We incorporated a lot of dialogue with the order and had things where there's a hint ingredient from the narrative. So we really tried to intertwine both the drink making process and the after hours. We had like a general point system, like friendship points that took points from both drink making and after hours. And then we made sure like we didn't want it to be super, oh man, I was going on a roll and then I messed it up. Anyway, we didn't want the players to be aware of like the points and have like the number and things like that, because we didn't want the focus to be on the points. We wanted the focus to really be on the monsters and just the experience and the good vibes of the game. So just making all those decisions based off that one direction that we wanted to go was really important, and that decision was very pivotal for the game.
Hi, my name is Megan Herman, and I work on narrative for Spooky Speakeasy.
First, can I ask, what's the premise of the game? What's the setup?
I'm glad you asked. It's almost like I had prepared notes. Wow. So in Spooky Speakeasy, you get to bartend for a group of really like fun, unique, interesting monsters, and your bar is actually being closed down, which is super sad, by this company called the BBC, which stands for the Big Bad Company. And you only have 1 week left to make drinks and also make friends with the monsters that visit you. But of course, the monsters have problems of their own. So between making all those fun drinks, you also get the opportunity to talk and connect and maybe even make their lives like a little bit better.
Yeah, so what was the tone of the narrative, and what did you want the player to feel?
Yeah, so I think generally we were aiming for pretty lighthearted and, focusing on the relationships again. So like friendship based, or really just making it about the connection pretty across the board, I feel like in all teams. But it does vary in terms of which specific monster you're talking to. Like if the monster's narrative is pretty on like the sadder side or sympathetic, hopefully that would be mirrored in the player experience. Or if it's like a super happy story, then hopefully the player would feel happy. And I'm really confident in terms of getting that across through narrative, because our team and all the people who wrote, we had 10 writers and they all did amazing, and it's fantastic. So huge shout out to all of them. So definitely in terms of the individual storylines, it's come across really well.
How does writing for a game differ from writing for a TV show or movie or play?
Yeah, I think the first thing that stood out is how they're similar in a lot of ways. Like the very first thing that I noticed, because of how collaborative all of them are, which you might not kind of think about it from the outside looking in. But obviously, there wouldn't be a story or not. There wouldn't be a game if not for programming. Like they, put everything together very clearly. And the sound is such a huge part of immersion, and it's amazing. And honestly, the art of the monsters, which is absolutely fantastic, has more of a first impression than even the dialogue does. So it's really about everyone sort of coming together. And I think that's true for all types of visual storytelling, really. But unlike with like movies or television, the process wasn't always about figuring out what the story would be, although there was that, and that was great. But rather where the story would be in terms of gameplay and kind of where it fits in there. And we were sort of under the wing of the design team for that, and it was amazing as well, working with them. But also if there would be a story at all was something that was very early in the development process. That was something that was discussed. And that's very different from television and film. So as development continued and the design of the game got solidified, so did the narrative, which we've pretty much completed at this point, which is extremely exciting. So now we have a really good idea of what it looks like in terms of where it is, which was one of the big questions, and also what it is in relation to what the players are doing.
Is there a character in particular that you want to talk about to highlight, to kind of tease what kinds of stories might be told?
Yeah, there's a lovely range. We have some, stories on the more serious side, but then we also have 3 gremlins in a trench coat, and one that I recently reviewed, which is the knife unicorn, who is a sort of nihilistic socialist, which was really fun to read and also really well written by someone on our team. So there's a really nice range of sort of comedic, again, brought together by like the art team and programming, but just really fun to experience, as well as the branching narratives within each of those. So you kind of get to know them on a more personal level.
Can I ask, how was the dialogue implemented into the game, kind of on the back end? Like, how was it implemented into Unity?
Wow, I'm so glad you asked that question. That's a great question. To write the dialogue and the monster orders and the storylines to be implemented into Unity, we first used Google Docs and then we put it into Yarn files. And Yarn is this sort of great coding interface type thing that we used mostly for the branching storyline, which we have for each character. So that's kind of, I think, was our gateway into it. And then we had the whole narrative team use Yarn files for their monsters, which is really interesting because I'm someone who has very little coding experience. So it was this sort of link up with the programming team in terms of them giving us advice and also letting us know sort of if we wanted to reference something, a change maybe in like the monster's emotion or a different scene change, talking to the programming team and learning how to format that and write that in Yarn, because you have to write like a line of code for that rather than writing a script for a movie or something. You very much have to detail what's happening and what it relates to in terms of before the scene, after the scene, and during if there's any big changes within it.
Yes, I'm Justin Syndicues Hayden, and I'm the programming lead for Spooky Speakeasy. And basically my role as the program lead is kind of just making sure that things run smoothly, writing up tasks from design, kind of being that middle ground between those, helping people get engaged and on board in the programming process and making sure everything's going smoothly and contributing to the code where I can. So yeah.
What were some frustrating or funny bugs that you ran into, or that you or the team ran into?
Well, it's there are some funny ones. I would say probably the goofiest one is probably the cup thieves, which was so you might notice that you are a bartender and you are serving drinks. Well, there was a bit of a problem where you would serve a monster a drink and they would begin to exit from the scene, and then another monster would steal the cup as they passed by and then would be holding the full drink, and the monster would just go off the screen and the drink would just be floating in the monsters. It was kind of a goofy bug that had to do with hitboxes, but it was pretty funny because it would just be like this cup thief as the guy just ran off with the cup. I don't know, really goofy stuff. But that was probably a really funny bug that for some reason, it was a really easy fix, but we just put it off for so long. So it was just like in all of our gameplay for like 3 or 4 weeks, just for no reason at all. It was like, it literally took someone like 5 minutes to fix. It was just really funny. Kind of.
It's been fixed now.
Yes, it's been fixed now. It's been fixed at this point. But,
I want to ask, how did you help people onboarding onto the programming team? How did you help new programmers get acquainted with Unity?
One thing I did at the beginning was taking kind of like asking, hey, how new are you with programming? How not new are you with programming? And utilizing pair programming and instead of just putting like 2 beginners on a task and then 2 experienced people on a task, combining experienced people with beginners and encouraging the beginners to do what is called driving. And so it's the idea of since we're over Zoom, the beginners will be sharing their screen with the more experienced programmers, and the experienced programmers will basically be will basically be giving tips and like ideas and walking them through some of the more kind of like program specific stuff in Unity and giving them like kind of that knowledge. That way, because there's a difference between, so there's two things to this. The first is that when you're by yourself, your main ally is Google. But Google can be difficult, can be hard to traverse, especially when you're like new to it and you don't really know what you don't know and you don't know what to look up. Because it's like, you're like, oh, I know how to do this, but then it'd be like 30 lines of code, and then it's like, oh, there's actually this one line you can call that Unity already has, but you wouldn't be able to look that up because you don't know it, but an experienced person would. So there's that, and the other part of it is that if you have the beginner driving the screen, it's a little bit like doing is more. You're gonna learn more and derive more from like the actual process of like programming and doing what you need to do than if you're just watching an experienced person go at a light speed pace. And doing that made it so people became more familiar with the programming, as well as like being able to start doing stuff on their own when they wanted to, which is ultimately the goal of the entire thing. We're not here to make the next like Dark Souls or something like that. We're here to like learn as a club how to make cool video games and build a community for us like going forward. And so one of the most important things for that is us all gain experience and all learning. And so that was a really big goal, and I think we did well on that. So. I mean, I actually think beyond the problems that we had just kind of getting like set up onboarding wise, I actually don't feel like we had too many horrible merge conflicts compared to stuff I've worked on in the past. Obviously, we're not quite finished with the game at this point, so there might be problems moving forward. But for the most part, I think the teams have done a really good job of being disciplined in how we're treating our kind of like Git repositories and making sure everything is branched correctly and we're merging correctly and we're being really safe with that. For the most part, we've been pretty much good on all those fronts. A few slip ups here and there, but nothing that was like, oh wow, we're gonna need to take weeks to try and figure this out.
So how did you keep people involved and keeping people contributing to the project, doing meaningful work with the project week to week?
Well, each week, simply put, there's kind of a meme that developed about my inspirational speeches. That was not intentional. It kind of got to a point each week where we would discuss what was kind of important, what needed to be discussed. And then I kind of felt like a pep talk was in order, but it wasn't really it wasn't supposed to be anything official. It was just some words of encouragement about how talented, how ingenious, and how just overall creative and amazing everyone on the programming team was, and how we're better than all the other teams. But that's not really the point of the pep talk. And ultimately, it became this weekly inspirational speech to make sure everyone kept on fire, kept working, and kept making good code, good, clean, efficient, productive, fantastic code.
My name is Sarah Ewan, and I'm the art lead on Spooky Speakeasy.
How did you delegate or split up work for the game and still have it all look uniform and mesh well?
I guess once a week for delegating tasks, like once a week we would come together and discuss what art needs to be prioritized within our teams and with the other leads like design and programming, just to make sure that there aren't any dependencies that are going to like bug us throughout the week. Then we check in on how much time everybody has to work on art for that week, what everyone's comfortable with drawing, and then from there we'd figure out which tasks we should split up. And as for making it look uniform, we had to lay down an art style like pretty late within development. Like once we realized that our art styles were like really different, that's when we started talking about like what you said, like with the lines, we wanted to make sure the lines look really consistent, and that we're all like coloring in things the same way. So from there we made like a unified art style that we could all try to achieve to make the game look more like put together.
What kind of like visual aesthetic goals do you have for the game? Like what kind of style did you want to get across?
Right, so for the visual style of the game, we knew that we wanted to have more of a local friendly vibe to the bar. So we tried to lean towards a more like warm color palette with a few neon accents just to give it that kind of quirky flair. And then with the characters, we wanted them to be a lot more colorful in contrast with the more like monotonous warm background, because that's really what's the main part of the game is the characters that you're building relationships with.
Can I ask what kind of artistic tools did the team utilize?
Yeah, that's a pretty simple answer, I guess. Most of us used Photoshop or Clip Studio Paint and drew with Wacom tablets.
Helen's Was it Helen's early drawings?
The
Or
bird,
was
bird
it
person?
Megan's bird person
That was
and
Helen's.
Helen. Okay, yeah.
Bird
Oh, I
per-
think we did get the bird person to the game. We
Oh.
kind of just like adapted it into Kate the cockatrice. Yeah. Well, that was inspired by Helen's very first piece of concept art for the game.
Solid. And can we briefly mention Cheese Ryan and
Octococo.
Octococo?
Oh yeah, that was really hard to cut
We'll
out.
try to pull clips of it and
But yeah, like personally, I'd like never had a leadership position before, so it was really scary for me. But once I like came on the team and I like felt all the warmth from everybody, everybody is so welcoming and laid back. Atmosphere is always very upbeat. Started to feel a little bit more comfortable in my role. Also, like as a lead, you aren't really like you don't have like an iron grip on things. You're more just like taking care of organizational things and stuff like that. But like when you're talking within your team, you're more like an equal to everyone else. So I think that was great.
So what was the process like in like iterating on concept art for the characters in the background?
I mean, I'm gonna be honest, for a lot of the characters, we kind of just like threw darts at the wall and like whatever landed, we just stuck with it. I think with the backgrounds was what we had the most like intense development with. We had like a lot of like initial mood boards where we were like pulling images from Google and just trying to get the general vibe down, because really like getting the background right was probably the most important thing for establishing like a good atmosphere with the game. With the characters, you could be a little bit more loose because like you could just lean in towards like all the characters are wacky, they look different. You don't have to make it so like unified as a background really needs to be. So yeah, after like we had made those mood boards, we went through a lot of color palette development and a lot of ideas floating around about interior design. Yeah, we don't have it finished yet. I'm not sure how like the final line art looks yet, but I'm sure it's going to be great.
Hi, I'm Owen. I am a co-lead for sound for the game.
I'm also a co-lead for sound. My name's John.
What were your goals for the music of the game?
Well, I think we started out, we knew that the game was going to be something to do with monsters and something to do with like a club kind of scene. So we brainstormed, we set up, a playlist, just to throw back different moods and different tones for the music. But we wanted to keep, something spooky, right? Like our title suggests. And we wanted to make it something kind of jazzy or sometimes, kind of drowsy or quirky to reflect the actual setting and the fun nature that we put it in. So I think those were the two biggest goals.
What resources do you use for sound?
Yeah, so the main resource that both John and I use is Ableton, which is a DAW, a digital audio workstation. We've used a variety of third-party plugins, but for the most part, our work was done in DAW. I know that John used some MuseScore, I believe, as a score writing tool. But other than that, using keyboards as MIDI controllers and Ableton was most of the tools we use.
How did you record the sound effects, and were there any funny things you had to do to record such sound effects?
Actually, I think the most fun I had was making that ambient, background track for the bar scene. I just brought up a whole bunch of plates and silverware and started banging them around next to the microphone. I had pitchers of water that I was like, twisting around. I shook a can of salt. Oh, and I brought a blender up to the mic too to get our special blender sound. I don't think that one made it into the game though.
I did almost the same thing. I turned my kitchen into a giant drum set and hooked a microphone up and just went ham with a couple of pieces of silverware, tinking everything. And also mashed in some audio of conversations that were pulled from various sources, i.e. Open alpha meetings, TV shows, movies, a dinner table conversation, and just mashed it all together so it sounds fairly ambient. But yeah, same process, just set up plates and went nuts.
That's really funny. I didn't know that you got like conversations for open alpha meetings. That's
Oh
really
yeah, one of the meetings you recorded in the drive, I just stole part of it because it had some talking in it.
nice.
Do you want us to talk about any of the specific shows or amusing audio clips? Easter eggs?
Yeah, we have Fat Thor from Endgame, and also Meek and Korg talking in Thor Ragnarok. There is two episodes of Curb Your Enthusiasm, a scene from Groundhog Day, a some audio from a Blackhawks game, and I think that and Biden telling Trump to shut up in the first presidential debate.
Cool. And then
That's really
how is like making music for a game different from making music for film or TV?
There's a lot to that question, I think. The first thing is that the music is obviously a second, it's a second thought to the game, right? You should focus on the gameplay. We want the players to be immersed in what they're doing, not immersed in listening. With a few exceptions, I don't mind making really sparkly title music and credits music, but that was the first concern. I know that personally, a couple demos I threw to the team were like way too busy. There was too much to focus on there. So creating background music, secondary, is one of the biggest concerns. Owen would be able to answer this better than me, but I also know that technically, like music for games also has to be formatted a little bit differently.
Yeah, I'll add on to that one of the biggest things you have to concern yourself with is from a game, even different than writing for a movie, much less writing a music to just release as an artist, is being conscious of the fact that it's probably going to loop. And this means rendering it as a loop so that when it starts over, it doesn't sound like the song just started over, because the last thing you want is for people to know where the song loops and then be constantly bothered by the fade out and fade back in. But on top of that, it's also, you want to make sure it's not too repetitive to the point where it's annoying because it's looping, but you also don't want it to be so interesting that, again, you can tell that it's looping. So finding that middle ground of something that can be in the background and is interesting enough to not sound overly repetitive, but at the same time can loop well. It's striking that balance.
Yeah, I have actually one more thing to add. For this game, we use a variety of different sounds and like textures. So there's music, there's ambient soundtracks. Like Owen said, there's vocals and different people talking. And we want to make sure that when you're listening to the music and when you're listening to the rest of the sounds in the game, you can tell what's what. So, for example, during the game, there are no vocals during the music. The only vocal sounds that you hear are going to be the responses to the drink making. Opposite that, this is something I'd like to work on some more. Different like menu sounds and the music in the menus might, at times overlap because, given some more time, we'd find different ways to work around it. But when you use similar sounds, people tend to confuse what's coming from where. So that's an ongoing concern, but kind of secondary to the other ones we were talking about.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gabriela Martinez, and I'm the playtesting lead for Spooky Speakeasy.
As playtesting lead, what kinds of responsibilities did you have? What does playtesting lead do?
So I'd have to say that the focal point of playtesting and being the playtesting lead is definitely communication. I was in charge of crafting a lot of forms, PowerPoints, and documents so that I could either communicate to the rest of the cohort what it is they need to understand when they oversaw a playtest, or communicate with the playtesters so that they could give us accurate feedback that I could then disseminate to the rest of the cohort. So I would say that that is definitely the emphasis of playtesting is definitely communication, and that in itself is an umbrella for everything, all the other responsibilities that I had as a playtesting lead.
So how did playtesting work in a remote environment over Zoom?
I think it's a little difficult for me to answer that, mainly because this is my first time, like Sarah had mentioned, undertaking a role of this with such responsibility before. And this also entails that I have never done playtesting before this semester, but I would say that there are some positives and negatives to it. The main detriment is definitely that you get a more inhuman aspect of communicating with playtesters. Like, you don't get to actively observe them physically. So it can make things feel a little foreign and a little sterile and strange. But there is also the benefit that you can reach out to a few more people that aren't immediately within the USC sphere and get more feedback from a wider variety of people. And I think so there's definitely detriments and benefits to being playtesting in a remote environment.
How did you go about collating all the feedback, and what did you pay special attention to?
So I think that's a really good question, especially because considering the fact that we are in a remote environment, it would have a little bit of an effect. Collating the feedback, we acquired feedback through 2 different avenues. The main thing that we had to collate all the to gather all the feedback that we got from the playtesters was the Google feedback form, which I created. And what I did in order to be able to accurately define all aspects of the game and ensure that we got feedback for all aspects of the game was reach out to all the other leads and have them assemble a list of questions that they thought would be relevant to that particular build of the game that we were playtesting on that day. So once that happened, I would put that all in a Google feedback form, sometimes rephrasing the questions so that they were a little more user-friendly and encouraging ease of usability for the playtester, so that they could just zoom through the questions without having to provide so much input that it became an oversaturation. So what we want is to show them that we appreciate their time, but also gather everything that we need in order to provide further improvements to the game. The other thing I did was look to, again, whoever was there to oversee the playtest, whoever participated that day during those 2-hour blocks that we had our events. And I had them collate all of the feedback that they gleaned and everything that they thought was particularly striking or important or of note. And that could include comments that perhaps they stood out because of one particular playtester, but they weren't a commonality among all the playtesters. And then I would have them put that in a thread in our Slack. And so I would gather information from all the people that playtested because they're the ones that are developing the game. So that's one perspective that is very useful to improving the game. And then I would take the information directly from the playtesters' mouths and then put that all together, disseminate the information at our weekly meetings where I'd put it all in an easy to consume slide format.
How did you help onboard the new Open Alpha members who aren't familiar with playtesting? What was the process for that?
I think that part of the process was a lot of fun for me. So I taught making documents and Google Forms. I also made a PowerPoint presentation, or I think a couple PowerPoint presentations, but one that I utilized so that I could train other members that hadn't received what we received in CTIN 488, which involves a lot of playtesting. That's where you learn a lot of basically the best methods for implementing playtesting and reacting toward playtesters when they give you specific forms of feedback, right? So in creating that PowerPoint, I went through basically the definition of what feedback is, what a feedback form is, because we did develop, we took that feedback template and added another column to it that would allow for comments that perhaps were still relevant in some sense, but not to the other parts of the template, and formatted a little bit differently so that it better fit the style of playtesting that we were attempting to implement in OA. And then describe that to whoever I was trying to teach, give them some examples of questions that they should ask, which are meant to be neutral questions, not leading toward any direction, whether that be positive or negative. And then also teach them how to react when they receive feedback that they didn't like, or how to react when a playtester got stuck in a certain part during a certain part of the game and didn't know how to progress. And you had to ensure that you maintained like control of yourself so that you wouldn't be like, okay, actually, this is what you do. Because maintaining that self-discipline allows us to see where the faults in the gameplay are, and thus allows us to implement improvements toward the game. So that was a lot of fun. I would reach out to like the cohort and ask if anyone had time, and that I would be hosting a specific, I would have an allotment of time where I would host a PowerPoint presentation where I went through the ropes and then showed them what it is to do. Yeah, so that was a lot of fun, actually. It was kind of a bonding moment. I enjoyed it.
I am. Yeah, no, that's right. Okay, as like a little platform for your fight on that goes like this.
That's perfect.
Jeez.
Thanks, everyone. Well, that's it for our demo. We hope you enjoyed getting to see what our development is like behind the scenes.
As we said before, our game is available for download right now. You can download it directly from our website, or you can reach out to anyone on the team to get a playtesting key to install with Steam. Also, our game releases fully on Steam on Monday. The Steam page is linked on our website.
We also encourage you to sign up for our mailing list on our website to stay tuned about applications, playtesting events, and future release demos. For USC students, applications will open at the beginning of next semester, so keep a lookout for that.
Thank you for watching.
We hope you enjoy our game. Happy holidays.
What kinds of...
Yeah, that's a great question.
We'll get that at the end. Okay. Straight face.